Okay, so now we're going to talk about instructional strategies and accommodations. So the first one, big key point I want to talk about is how teachers managing the classroom environment. So first would be group management. So whenever I think about this, I think of those who have taken EDU 224 with Professor Betts. Oftentimes she would walk around the room and stand next to like one of us that were misbehaving. If we were on our phone, she'd come to proximity and work with us. And she wouldn't stop instruction, but these little hints remind those children, children to like that they're misbehaving and to come back to attention. So just these little things is how the teacher, without stopping your group work, manages the group just through the small little hints. So now I want to talk about time management. So students with ADHD benefit greatly with structure, the same routine every single day, so they know what is going on. Change is not a great thing for them, so let's stick with time management. Stick with your routines. When is the child supposed to go to the bathroom? When is specials? Keep those, the teachers keep those consistent every day for those children. Another thing with time management is you have your morning moves to start off the day and your ending day. So to have something that starts it and ends it so the children know what's coming next. Physical management, this is kind of more of where are the children located. So a lot of the times teachers move children if they're misbehaving, right? A lot of children with ADHD, sometimes they can't perform well sitting right next to some students. Different students react different with others. Sometimes they talk more next to Kelly than they would talk next to Lisa, right? So in that case, maybe she would move them to next to Lisa, because she talked more to Kelly, not to Lisa. Sometimes teachers move them in next to the teacher's desk. So the student is in more of a least distracted spot. So where in the classroom is that child not a distraction and not distracted? That's more the physical management. So where can those students be moved to? Positive behavioral support. This is kind of, for our 224 again, positive framing. So when a teacher talks about positive framing, this is more of the student you don't focus on the negative. You don't say you didn't do this right. You say, okay, you're almost there. Let's try one more thing. So you tell them positively what they're doing good, and try to form their mistakes into something positive to help them fix it. Not like their behavior. So that's more of instruction. But whenever you're talking about behavior, if a child's misbehaving, or doing something bad, you don't say, no, that was bad, let's not do that. Focus on, how about we try this approach instead? Let's not do this, let's try this instead. So just so the student can stay positive. Okay, so now we're going to talk about making instructional adaptations. So this is more of what an instruction, like the instruction given to the child, what is changed here. So the first thing would be effective teacher behavior. So this is kind of a different one. Each year, a child moves through the system, right? They get a new teacher and they have to adapt to that teacher. So in other words, some teachers are good dealing with ADHD students. Some teachers are still learning. So this is very different for some students. But a lot of times, teachers can adapt to this. There is steps that a teacher can take, or different methods in classroom environment that a teacher can use to benefit these students with ADHD. One being using a variety of different things, PowerPoints, whiteboards, group work, just to make the students not have the same routine every time. Another thing that teachers may often make is modifying the curriculum. So sometimes, instead of lecture-based assessments, only visuals, ADHD students are focused more on doing. So a lot of times the teachers change their curriculum to more hands-on or doing the things. Use manipulatives as a great use here. So students actually see where they're going and they're not just sitting still, because ADHD, you always want to be in motion, right? So I want to take attention to this picture here even. These students aren't just sitting and writing notes. Instead, they have manipulatives. So they're doing. They're not just listening, they're doing, okay? All right. So now we go to instructional strategies and modifications. Developing student regulated strategies. So this is more of how can the teacher help the student to stay on top of things, right? So one of the first things is study and organize tactics. So this is kind of, we roll back to structure. So this is so the teacher so the student can stay organized, kind of. So in other words, this would be kind of like the teacher keeping pencils and pens and paper in the same spot in the classroom. So each time the student needs something, they can just get up and go get it. So it's all in the same spot. Another thing would be like offering the students a place to work individually. So if they're getting distracted, just to go and cool down, and here it is. I know at my clinical, it's kind of cool. They have a teepee that if a child's just needs to sit and calm down, they go into the teepee and they don't see anyone. They just sit and they collect their thoughts. Another thing that a lot of students used to keep organized is an agenda. So a teacher helps the students, they write it on the board and tell the students what to write in their agenda so that student can keep track of the things they need to do. The next one is self-management, and I want to bring attention to this last sentence here. So this includes self-assessment, self-monitoring, self-instruction, and self-reinforcement. So this is more of how the teacher can tell where the student with ADHD feels like they are on the topic. A lot of times teachers will give cues to the students saying, to remind them to fill out their self-evaluation without saying it in class. This kind of goes back to group management, just the little cues, right? So this is more of like the student can tell the teacher or can realize how do they feel about the topic? Where do they feel like do they understand it? How do they, what are they doing good? What do they feel like they're doing good on the topic? And what do they feel like they need more help on? The self-instruction, what do they need more? So now we go on to social skills. A lot of students with ADHD lack good problem-solving skills, so they struggle to predict consequences of good behavioral skills and sometimes not the good ones. So for example, many students, if a student is running around at recess, sometimes their mind goes straight, it's one-sided and they don't think of the consequences. So a lot of times teachers, whenever they hear about this, they choose a similar situation, not the exact same, but a similar situation that the student can make a tie back to, and they do role play. So with this, they have the student be in a situation, and how should they react in that situation? Making them actually think about the consequences of the situation. So then the next time that occurs, that student won't do that. So a lot of teachers, if they hear about this, they will make students go through this strategy here. So now for the activity. So for the activity, I've given you a scenario. Allie is a child that has been diagnosed with ADHD. She is unable to sit still in class and has a very hard time paying attention when the teacher is talking. Allie has a tendency to talk to the person sitting right next to her during class time, and she tends to get out of her seat when it is test time. So I want you, with this scenario, to fill out a contract. This is another strategy that teachers use to help students with ADHD to form a goal, to know what they need to do. In a contract, a teacher usually sits down with a student and they go through what behavior needs to be increased. So what is the behavior that the teacher wants to see out of the child? They identify the goal. So what is the goal of this contract? What does the student want to do by the end time? Which brings us into determine your time frame. So when does this start and when does this end? When does this child start trying to reach its goal and when is the goal supposed to be met? And then agree on a reward. So if the child makes this goal, what are you going to help them with? What are you going to give them? I want to take a look at this contract here. So what I want you to do is start with your beginning date. So when is it? When are we going to start this? And your ending date. When should it be agreed on? So Allie agrees to. This is Allie and Mrs. Amber. This part is where you're going to talk about your goal and what needs to be increased. So what is the goal? Where does it? What action needs to be increased? What are the steps you're going to take to increase that? Miss Amber and Allie need to both agree on steps. And another thing is we need to agree on a reward here. So what is the reward Allie gets if she achieves this goal? And then at the end, I want you to have the student signature and teacher signature because that makes it all official. So this is the method a lot of people go through when forming a contract for students. Okay? All right.